Okay, teachable moment here. I'm going to show you guys the proper way to crimp, because there is a right way and there is a wrong way. There are multiple kinds of crimp tools out there. This one right here, this has 3 steps so that you could do a little bit larger, like a 3mm or a 5mm crimp tube. Or you have the standard, nothing fancy 2-hole. Now, I want you to look at this tool right here. This back hole, if you can see it, has a little tooth in the center. That tooth is step 1. You're going to come in on your crimp tube and you're going to make sure that your wires, because they're going to be like this, they're going to be parallel to one another. And what you're going to do by using this crimper tool is you are going to make 2 separate, I don't know what you call it, but you're gonna crimp in the center of this tube, keeping those 2 wires parallel to one another. That is step 1. Why do you want to do 2 steps with a crimp? Why don't you want to just go for the gold and go for the first one? It's because with time, that's going to work itself out. It's going to fray. And if you have those wires right here, if you have them crisscrossed inside your crimp tube, that is going to wear with time, and that's going to break, and you're going to find that you're making yourself a necklace all over again, or you're going to have an unhappy customer. So let's go, because what's the easiest way to do it? Showing you, right? So here's my crimp tube. It's a 2mm copper crimp tube. These are my favorite. I do not like those little round ones. I think they're terrible. I don't think they crimp very well. So this first one I'm doing, I'm going to show you with the regular, everyday, nothing fancy 2-step crimp tool. So I've got that on there, and I always use wire guards. The end of your necklace here is going to take a lot of wear and tear over the years. People wearing it, you wearing it. You want it to last as long as possible, right? And that's what this wire guard is for. So you're going to go up one side, making sure it's a horseshoe facing your necklace. You want it facing towards your necklace. And if you're going to use jump rings in addition for some extra security, then you're going to want to add that on now if you're using closed jump rings, because otherwise you're not going to get that jump ring on. So now I'm going back down through my wire guard. And you're going to want to make sure it stays in that ditch in your wire guard. What ditch am I talking about? It's this little thing at the top of your horseshoe that keeps that wire in place. Now here's the tricky part. It's even more tricky if you're on the other side of your crimp, finishing off your necklace. Okay, it's also tricky because trying to do it on camera, it wants to move. But you only have one shot to finish this at the very end. If you mess up your second crimp, there's no cutting and redoing. Now, how do you keep them from crisscrossing? That's a good question. It's difficult, but the more you do it, the more you'll learn. Oy, these are tiny little parts. Okay, so grabbing onto that short end right here, my trick is to slide my nail up and keep my nail in between those 2 wires. Let's show you on this one. So we're going to go to that back step right there. And we're going to make sure that our crimp tube is completely in that. We're not going to let our wire guard take our wire and twist it, keeping it as straight as you possibly can. Again, I've got my nail in there. Now, give it a good squeeze. And if you did it right, you're going to see 2 separate lines, like so. So I know that these 2 wires are still parallel to one another. They've not crisscrossed. Otherwise, you're going to see a bump in the center, and it will easily pull out. We're not done though. There is step 2 to make it extra secure, and it is not going anywhere. We're going to go into that first bump. But first, we're going to turn it so that we're actually crimping it in the opposite direction of that first crimp we made. So if you can see what I mean here, see how that's turned? Okay, now I'm going to give it a good squeeze. And if I did it right, we're going to have a taco or a hot dog bun. And I did it right. That sucker is not going out anywhere. It's not going to pull out of that crimp whatsoever. But because I am kind of OCD about it and I only like doing things once, I'm going to take my needle nose and I'm just going to give it an extra squeeze there and make sure that that's all super tight. I'm going to cut my excess wire right here. Normally, if you're using larger beads with a pretty decent size hole, you can get away with sticking this end through the rest of your beads and hiding it, but these tourmaline pieces I'm using are really itty bitty. Okay, so my next step is I don't want to see this copper crimp tube. I don't think it's attractive. It's not aesthetically pleasing to me. So I use these things right here. These are called crimp covers. They come in different sizes and different colors. The most important thing you have to remember with these, when you are closing them, go slow. They do not like to move quickly. So holding that in the little divot that's there, you'll see it when you have them in front of you. Just use your flat nose pliers to slowly close your crimp cover. If you don't go slow, you're going to see that seam. It'll stand out like a sore thumb. And just kind of rotate as you go so that you get a perfectly round ball. See how much more attractive that is? Sure, it's behind your neck. You're never going to see it, but I know it's there. And when I'm selling my jewelry, I think it looks much more attractive to not have that crimp tube showing, especially if I'm using silver. All right, here's another secret. We don't want our necklace to be super stiff. It doesn't feel nice when we wear it. Our beads don't lay nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of loosely coil that up on our table. I'm going to get my jump ring out of the way here. And you can see that I've already got my crimp tube down there. So let's go ahead and add that wire guard. This is going to, coiling it loosely like this, make sure that you have a nice bit of space in between your stuff, so, your beads, so that they're not going to be super stiff and rigid, because that is just not comfortable. Once again, I'm dropping my jump ring down because this jump ring is a closed jump ring. Okay, and this is your one that you cannot mess up. So before you squeeze that crimper tool, you better make sure you got it right. Going back down through my horseshoe. I'm going through my crimp tube. Maybe. I don't know why it's fighting me. There we go. And now I'm keeping track at this point. I am keeping track of that short end. The end that I know I need to keep on top, because that's the end that I put through the horseshoe. This is going to take a little concentration on your part. So always making sure that the wire that I want does not crisscross. Okay. Making sure that that other part of the wire is in the ditch. I'm keeping my finger in between my strands of beading wire. And now let's show you on this handy dandy tool. This one would be for 3 to, I'm gonna say probably upwards of a 10 millimeter crimp tube. I don't use them very often. I usually only use 2 millimeter, but if you're using a thicker beading wire and you need a crimp tube that's bigger, then by all means, that's the one you would use. But we're gonna focus on this center one right here on my fancy 3-step tool. Okay, keep that jump ring out of the way. Try to keep everybody straight. Make sure your tension is good. Make sure that crimp tube is completely in your tool. Okay, fingers crossed. If I did it right, what am I gonna see? I'm gonna see 2 parallel lines. And that's exactly what I see here. If I pulled this really, really hard, I can still pull that. We don't want that. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna rotate it a half a turn. We're gonna put it in step 1 right here. Making sure that that is still turned. And we are going to give it a squeeze. If I did it right, what am I gonna see? I'm gonna see a taco. I'm gonna see a taco or a hot dog bun. There we go. Super tight, ready to cut. Make sure you do not cut your work. You're gonna be really upset because at this point you gotta redo the whole thing. Okay, and now let's take our needle nose. Give that an extra little squeeze. Okay, and if you've got any of that tail hanging out and you're not using a crimp cover, then you're gonna need to make sure that you clip that little tail that's left, or else it's gonna scratch on somebody's neck. It's gonna scratch on your neck. You're gonna be really unhappy. So here's my crimp cover. I'm going over that crimp tube. I'm making sure that that crimp tube is going to stay inside my crimp cover. And what am I going to do? I'm going to use my flat nose to slowly close my crimp tube. Notice how I rotate my tool. tacking it from different angles. And I am slowly closing that so that it keeps a round sheep. And what do I have here? I have a perfect crimp cover closure. I can't find that seam unless I look for it. So there you go. We have a nice necklace that has no ugly crimp tubes. It's nice and flexible. And that is going to last you much, much longer than if you didn't use a crimp tube and you didn't crimp it the right way. Thanks for watching.